Hi, I'm Heather Rogers from Headway Transformations. And if you're watching this, you're probably either curious about AI or perhaps you've already tried it once or twice and weren't totally sure what you were doing. That's exactly why I made this video. I've been using Claude, that's the AI tool that we're going to be working with today, for a significant chunk of my business building over the past many months. And honestly, it's changed the way that I work. It's like having a very capable assistant who never sleeps and doesn't judge you if you're having a crazy brainstorming session at 2 a.m. So, what I want to do today is show you specifically how Claude can help you build and run your hypnosis practice from the very first pieces of your business infrastructure all the way through to marketing, client experience, and even your day-to-day operations. So, we're going to cover a lot of ground. By the end of this, you're going to have a complete prompt library that you can start using immediately. And you're going to have watched me use it in real time so you know what to expect. A couple of things before we dive in, though. First, Claude is not magic, it's a tool. And like any tool, the results you get depend entirely on how you use it. A hammer in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they're doing makes a mess. But in the right hands, it builds something beautiful. So that's what today is about, putting the right technique behind the tool. And second, most of what I'm going to show you today is available in the free version of Claude. There are paid tiers with more features, and full disclosure, I do use that for myself. But learning and for most of what we're going to do today, the free version is perfectly fine. So I'm going to start with some foundational stuff that will make every single interaction with Claude more effective. Don't skip this. It's tempting to jump right to the prompts, get into the meat of things, but 5 minutes of setup work will save you hours of frustration later. We're going to do some demos and I'll give you some before and after type stuff of showing you how different prompts work and how crafting a good detailed prompt makes a huge difference in what you're doing. We'll also build out a client intake package from scratch in real time. So after that, I'll walk you through the prompt library that I put together for you. It's got 51 prompts across 6 different categories, and they're all designed specifically for hypnosis practitioners. Then we'll talk about how to organize your work in Claude so that nothing gets lost and you're not starting from scratch every single time. We'll close with some thoughts on how to keep getting better at this. Because, like anything else, the more you use it, the more you'll figure out your own shortcuts and preferences. I know I use it very differently now than I did when I first started out. So, I've also created a reference document that goes with this video, and I'll make sure that you all get access to it. So, I'm going to share my screen now so that you can all follow along. So, bear with me here. Okay, so you should be able to see my Claude screen now. So to get to Claude, you just go to Claude AI and again, create that free account if you haven't already done so. And so the first thing I want to talk about before we get into any prompting at all, it's something I call the master context block. This is genuinely the single most important thing that I can tell you today. So stick with me. The thing with Claude is that it doesn't remember things from one conversation to the next. It does have some memory now. It didn't used to really have it initially, and I'll get into that in a minute. But you have to assume that when you're starting a fresh conversation, Claude doesn't know much about you. So basically, it's working blind. It's a great tool, but it's working blind. So by creating a master context block, it solves this issue because you create a short paragraph, maybe 4 or 5 sentences, and you paste that into the start of every important conversation. That'll tell Claude exactly who you are and how best to work with you. So I have one saved on my desktop and I don't really need it anymore, but initially I used it a lot when I was starting new conversations with Claude. So I just want to point out really quickly something on the left toolbar is this projects tab here. We're going to get into it later, but using projects gives you a way so that you don't have to use this context block. But if you don't want the hassle of setting up a project, just make sure that you have that context block description. If you did Cormac and Jody's business course, then you've probably already got all the content written anyway. So, okay, let's move on. So, I'm going to paste in our a sample of the context block, and I have created this just for the demo. And so it's a fictitious business. So you can see that it just has the basics there. Basically, name, business name, what you specialize in, who your ideal clients are. You also want to tell it what tone you want, because depending on your niche, you may want to be fairly formal and clinical, or you may want to be, warmer, more conversational. So that's important. And also give it any phrases or anything that you want it to avoid. Again, there may be certain buzzwords or things that you just don't want to have in any of the stuff it writes for you. So make sure you put that in there and then give it your website as well. And that's really all you need, at least to start with. So let's just get Claude processing that. And cool. Okay, so now it's got all that in there. So now I just want to talk a little bit more about the memory thing, because it's kind of a nuanced argument. Uh, Basically, Claude does now have memory. There is an option to turn it off, but assuming you've turned it on, it remembers things at the account level. And it builds up context about you with every conversation that you have. It's who you are, what you do, how you work. And that's really useful. But from conversation to conversation, it doesn't capture everything. So if you've been having a conversation in a window and you close that down and you start another Claude conversation in another window, it doesn't necessarily have all of the details of that conversation. It captures patterns and key facts over time, but you can't rely on it to remember, every detailed thing. It definitely will not keep all of the details of documents that you create. It'll know that you created something together, but it won't necessarily have all of the information of what you put into that document. So you still do need the master context block, whether you paste it in at the beginning of every conversation or set up a project that includes that information. It's still really important to have that rather than relying on Claude to remember everything. And secondly, make sure you're saving your work. Every time you have an important conversation, save anything important. What you can do is you can actually get Claude to build a reference document for you. So at the end of every important session is you just say, please build me a reference document for everything we've covered here. And then it will put down all the important points that it needs to know for starting another conversation. So I do that pretty much every time I interact with Claude. And then make sure you just save that to a location that'll be easy to find. And basically, yeah, it's helpful that it does remember. It does definitely get to know you over time, but do not trust that it's going to remember absolutely everything. So again, I showed you the projects tab. So that's Claude's main way of maintaining your context automatically across multiple conversations. You set your context once in the project instructions. You paste your master context block right in there. And from that point on, every conversation inside of that project already knows who you are. No pasting required. This is huge for practitioners who are building something over time, because if you're working on your website, developing a program, planning a launch, you do it inside a project, and then Claude always has your full context ready to go. I'd suggest setting up at least 3 projects to start, one for your practice overall, one for marketing and social media, and one for client materials. If you keep them separate, it keeps your context clean and your outputs consistent. Now, I'm not going to walk you through creating a project right now. That's something that I want you to do for yourself after watching this, and it's very straightforward. You just click New Project, give it a name, paste your master context block into the instructions, and you're done. So let's move on then. Get back to our chat. And there's the one still mind hypnotherapy that we created. So the last foundational piece before we get into the prompts is what I think of as the golden rule of prompting. And it's simple. Vague prompts produce generic results. The more context you give Claude, the better everything it produces will be. There are 5 elements that make a strong prompt: who you're writing for, what you need, the tone you want to convey, any constraints, and what to avoid. You don't necessarily need all 5 every time, but the more you include, the better your output will be. And here's the other thing. Claude is not a vending machine. You don't put in a prompt and accept whatever comes out. The best results come from treating it like a conversation. If something comes back almost right, but not quite, tell it what to change. Tell it what you loved and tell it where it missed the mark. Every single correction you make will make the output better next time. Okay, let's see this in action now. So before we get into the live demo, I want to give you the single most important thing to carry with you today. The quality of what Claude produces is directly proportional to the quality of what you give it. Vague in, generic out. Specific and contextual in, useful and targeted out. And I told you the 5 things to look for, but also, you don't need them all every time, but the more you include, the better the output is going to be. Okay, let's move on to the demo now. So for this demo, I'm going to build a client intake and welcome package from scratch. This is something that every single one of us needs, regardless of where we are in our practice. And it's something that can take hours to pull together. We're going to do it in a few minutes. I'm going to start with the intake form. First, context. Always start with the context. So I'm going to paste in a prompt here that I created for this demo. So I'm going to ask it to create a professional looking client intake form for my practice. I've already given it the information about that. I'm going to tell it what sections I want it to include. I'm going to give it the tone that I want. And I'm going to ask it to include a brief introduction at the top. It just helps put people at ease as to why I'm asking personal questions. So let's let Claude have a crack at that. So Claude should produce something from that prompt that will have a nice warm introductory paragraph, contact information, what brought them to hypnosis, goals and what success looks like for them, any relevant medical or mental history, previous hypnosis experience, an open field for anything else, and then a warm closing note. Now, this will probably run a little faster on your computers. My computer is old and slow and takes a lot longer to do all of this than would be the case for the average person. So normally you don't necessarily see it running through all the code like that as it's creating it. Often it'll just kind of go away for a few seconds and then pop up the result for you. But I have to be a little bit patient here. So I can't stress enough how important it is to read everything that Claude gives you. Do not accept anything at face value. Claude makes mistakes. I've been working with it pretty much daily for months now. It knows my business inside out, and it will still come up with things that are just completely wrong sometimes. We will have created a program, and all of a sudden one day it'll call the program by the wrong name or things of that nature. So it's really important that you read absolutely everything and check everything over. And again, the more instruction you give it as to what you like, what you don't like, the sort of tone you want, that all helps it to do better with each subsequent document or thing that you produce. Also, we talked about doing the context statement, and that's really important. But I would also definitely try to feed it some examples of your writing. These can be, emails that you've put together. They can be documents that you've created for clients or presentations you've done, things like that. Because, the more examples you give it of your own voice, your writing, the more closely it can mimic that. And then the less work you have to do to tweak everything to get it to be the way that you want. So, okay, let's take a look here. So Claude has created a nice little form for us. We didn't give it any branding information, so it has just taken the liberty of using these shades of green, which I suspect it used because that's sort of a nice, calm, sort of therapeutic kind of color. You can see it's created all the different sections that we asked for. And there it is, little consent at the bottom for people to sign and date. Um, if you wanted to change the coloring or anything, you can give it your exact brand colors. For my brand, I have a little file that I keep on my desktop that has the hex values for all the colors that I use for my branding. And anytime I'm getting it to create anything, I feed those in just to be sure that it gets them right. And then it does everything beautifully branded and in my color scheme. So we won't get into that now, but just know that that is an option and it handles it beautifully, creating really custom looking things. So this form looks great. There might be some things you want to tweak. You can either do that yourself, download the file, and do a little bit of editing on your own, or you can tell Claude what you want it to change and just get it to run it again, and it will do that. Now, let's say we've done the form and we've decided that there's a new section that we want to add. So let's just pop in another prompt here and we'll ask it to add a section about any concerns or fears that they might have about going into hypnosis. And Claude will create a brand new version of the form. It will adjust everything, change numbering and layout and everything so that it meets the requirements that we're asking for. While it's doing that, I also want to say do make sure that you download every asset that you create using Claude. Before I scroll down a little bit, you could see there was a download button for the form that it created for us. Make sure that you do that because if you close that window and you haven't downloaded whatever it created, it will be gone. You can always ask it to create it again. It may not be exactly the same, but it's really important that you download things because those things will not persist from session to session. It also gives you the option, in addition to downloading the docx file if you work typically in Word, it also gives you the option to open it in Google Docs. So you can do one or the other, or do both if you want to have a backup copy somewhere. So now it has updated our form and it's adjusted all the sections and it has added this nice section here about finding out more about your concerns about going in hypnosis. So again, you can ask it to make any change like that and it takes, a few seconds or a minute at most. So it's just a huge time saver because if you had to go in and edit that and trying to get all the layout right and the text would be easy, but sometimes monkeying with the layout of these types of forms can take forever and it just does it so quickly. So now what I'm going to ask it to do is to write a welcome email to send to a new client that has just booked their first session. So I'm going to paste in a prompt for that. So we're asking it to be warm, to be enthusiastic, explain what to expect in their first session, include some preparation instructions, be comfortable, wear comfortable clothing, eat a light meal, let them know that they can get in touch with you at any time, and then end with something that builds, a little bit of anticipation, not too over the top. And I'm asking it to keep it concise, warm, and human, and not be a wall of text. So let's give it that task and see how it does. Now this should be a little faster because it's just going to come back with it in a, yeah, in a little window here. So there's the email that it's created for us. And you'll notice that you can send it via Gmail right from here, or you can use this button to copy it and paste it into, either an email client, or you can just paste it into a document that you save for yourself, saying like sample client welcome email or something like that. So, now, just take a look here. We're going to do one more prompt. And so what we've done is we created our client intake form, and now we've created this email, but we want to make sure that our messaging is consistent because we don't want one having a really warm, welcoming tone and then the other one having maybe a more clinical, formal tone. So I'm going to use this prompt asking it to compare the two documents and to let me know whether they are consistent in terms of tone and feel across both documents. So obviously doing this kind of analysis is a great place, where AI can be really useful because it can do side-by-side comparisons so easily. So let's see, it's telling us it's really good. It always comes back, even if it's you're asking it to criticize something, it always comes back and tells you what's working well, which is really nice to know. And then in this case, it's telling us that something's a little off. The form is a little more formal than the email. And it's telling us, for example, the concern section is a little more formal than the rest of the form, and that there's a tonal mismatch in section 7. So again, it's going on and telling us things that we shouldn't change, and it's giving us a beautiful little summary of suggested edits. So now you can either do those yourself, you can completely reject them, you can ask it to make different changes, or you can just, if you've looked at all of them and you think, yep, those are reasonable, that actually makes sense, you can just tell it to go ahead and edit it. So it's already asked me if I want it to apply the edits. So I'm just going to say, yes, please. Ignore the typo. My keyboard was sticking. So now it's just going to run through. So the beauty about being able to do this is that a single prompt can just catch any, subtle changes from tone drifting from one document to the next before it becomes a problem. Because if one document has now drifted away and it's not quite as consistent or carrying the same tone, and then you make another document based on the one that you just did that's not super consistent with the first one, then, with each thing you create, you might get further and further away from the tone that you're really wanting to be projecting. So by running a prompt like this, you catch that right off the bat and can correct your problems, in a matter of seconds, really. So, and there it goes. So it has made all the changes. It has given us a new form here. It's updated in the viewing window. And we now have a form that's nice and consistent with the email. Okay, so let's move on. So now what I want to do is I want to create a little document that would go to customers or to clients before their first session, and it just gives them a little bit more information, talks about, what you do, what they should be doing in the 24 hours before their session, what to do to make sure that they're comfortable, how to prepare mentally, gives them a little bit of a pre-talk about what hypnosis is and isn't, addresses some of the common fears, and tells them what they can do to get the most out of their session. And you'll notice it also, the prompt said that it wanted the tone to be warm and reassuring, and that someone reading it should feel more relaxed about their session, not less so. And I've asked it to create it as a clean standalone document that my clients will receive as a PDF file. So there, it's just running through that. Give it a few more seconds. And then it's going to create a nice PDF. Now, if you're interested in having the files, the source code yourself for future editing, rather than just getting Claude to update things, you could ask it rather than asking for a PDF, you could ask for the docx version or the Google Docs version, and then you have the source files and you can always create a PDF from that. If you don't care about being able to edit the source files yourself, then just create the PDF, because if you do need to edit it later, you can just feed that same PDF back to Claude and say, hey, I want you to change the following sections, and, give it detailed instructions as to the changes that you want it to make. And it will just go ahead and make those updates for you. So let's just give it another minute here. There we go. So we've got now a 4-page guide. It's continued the using the teal, and it's created 5 different sections. It's talking about sleep, water, food, caffeine, and alcohol consumption. A whole section on how to prepare mentally. Talks about the fears, getting the most out of your section, and it's all beautifully formatted. So, and then it's come back and it also said that it's left the contact details as just the website footer, because we didn't give it any information about, phone number or email or anything like that. But if we had that information, we fed it to Claude right now, it would add that in and, totally update the document for us with that. So now we have a complete onboarding package. We've got an intake form, a welcome email, and pre-session instructions, all built in probably under 10 minutes. They're all consistent in tone. They're all consistent in style and color use, and with minimal editing. So that's just a good example of what's possible. And that's just one category of the prompts in the library that I've created. So, so the reference document, which you probably don't have yet, we're just going to talk about it for a few minutes. There are 6 categories, 51 prompts in total. There's a start here section at the front that covers everything that we've just talked about, the master context block, projects, the golden rule of prompting. So let's just quickly go through the categories. Category 1 is business foundations. And this is where I would start if you're just getting going. This is your bio, description of your services, your FAQ page, pricing, elevator pitch, things like that. Category 2 is client experience, and this will cover your full client journey, intake forms, welcome emails, pre-session introductions, post-session follow-ups, policy documents, how to ask for testimonials. So, when you're ready, you can work through this category and you can build your entire client infrastructure from these prompts. Category 3 is marketing and social media. This is things like Facebook and Instagram posts, ad copy, headline variations, a full content calendar, your Instagram bio, a newsletter if you want, your Google business profile, even how to respond to a negative review. So wide range of prompts to help with all of that stuff. Category 4 is content and authority building. So this is things like blog posts, topic idea generators, LinkedIn articles, lead magnets, speaker bios, podcast pitch emails, workshop descriptions, press bios. There's a lot of stuff here, and the content just helps build your reputation over time and helps build a social media presence. Category 5, excuse me, I just need a sip of water. Category 5 is operations and organization. So this is things like session notes templates, client progress trackers, referral partner outreach, onboarding checklists, and one of my personal favorites, the reference document prompt. And that one I will talk about in a moment. Category 6 is advanced prompting. So this is the section that you come back to once you're comfortable with all the basics. This is things like chaining prompts for really big projects and, really surgically refining the outputs, really teaching Claude your voice, using Claude as a thinking and strategic partner, stress testing your ideas. This is where like the sky's the limit. You can just do so much. So now, how to actually use this document. So the prompts are templates. They're not finished products. Every placeholder in square brackets that you'll see is something that you need to fill in. The more specifically you fill them in, the better your results are going to be. And the notes under each prompt are worth reading. They're not filler, they explain why specific parts of the prompt are doing what they're doing. So, having an understanding of that will help you write your own prompts from scratch. And one more thing about this library. Remember, it's just a starting point. It's not a ceiling. Once you've used these prompts a few times, you start adapting them, combining them, and just building brand new prompts on your own. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. So now I want to talk about organization because this is something I wish someone had told me earlier. And it's the thing that most people get wrong when they start using Claude. The problem is this: Claude has very little memory between conversations. So, as I said before, every new chat is a blank slate. So, if you spend an hour building something amazing, some great copy, a killer intake form, an ad that, actually converts, and you close that tab without saving anything, it is just gone. It's not gone from your computer if you saved it, but it's gone from Claude's awareness. So the next time you open a new chat, it doesn't know that any of that has happened. So the two solutions to this, and you need both of them. The first is projects. So we've already talked about it. Use them. Set them up now before you go any further. They won't save the content of your conversations automatically, but they preserve your context. So Claude always knows who you are and what you're working on inside the project. And then the second is the reference document habit. At the end of any session where you've created something that you want to keep, before you close the tab, run this prompt. I'm going to paste it in for you now. So basically, you tell it that you've just finished the session. You describe what you made. So we created a client intake package. Pardon my typing. Client intake package. And then you just tell it that you want it to compile everything that we did today in a nice organized document with brief summary of what each piece is, and just let it go off and do that. We didn't do a ton in this session, so it won't take very long. Famous last words on my slow computer. I have used this to keep track of things like spelling preferences because I'm in Canada and sometimes we spell things differently. Or sometimes I'll note before the end of a session that there's something specific that I want to do the next day, and I'll ask Claude to include that in the reference so that I have some accountability the next day when I fire things up. It will come back and say, hey, so we were going to work on this today. So it can be super helpful aside from just being a general reference of capturing what you did in that session. It can also just, really help you stay on track with the tasks that you need to do and help to keep you accountable. So Claude's going to produce a nice, clean, organized document of everything that we built. And you just copy that, paste it somewhere permanent, like a Google Doc, Word file, whatever strikes your fancy. And that alone will save you a huge amount of frustration because at some point you will forget to do this and it will hurt. So build the habit in now so that that doesn't happen to you, and you will thank me later. So now let me just show you something a little bit different. And this is how Claude can help you organize your business data, not just your Claude workspace. So I'm going to ask Claude to help me design a simple client progress tracker. So let's just let it finish running this reference document, which again, normally does not take anywhere near this amount of time. I just have a really old, really sluggish computer. Normally that would be done in a matter of seconds, but it should be done shortly, and it'll come up with a nice, neat document for us. Come on, Claude. One thing I wanted to mention as well while we're waiting is if there's ever something you don't know, even if it's about Claude, just ask it. Um, if you don't know how it can help you with something, say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me with that? Or, hey, Claude, how can I get, the most productive use out of using you? And it will tell you. So never forget that. So see, it's created this really nicely formatted session reference for us. It's highlighting what we created. And it looks like it even copied the both the email and the document into here, so we have a permanent record of that. And then it's created follow-up items as well for things that we need to do, such as adding our email address and phone number, which we didn't have in the document before. So that can be super helpful because it doesn't always just do what you ask it to do. It also will say, hey, by the way, you didn't do this or that, and that's something you should look into. So I like that about it because it often prompts me to do things that I either didn't think to do or had forgotten to do. So now I'm just going to get it to create this really simple client progress tracker. I'm just again going to tell it, uh, what I want it for and mention what the goals are for it. So I want to be able to track each client's goals. Now, as Claude often does, it's come back and it's going to ask me a couple questions. So how many clients do we have? Let's just be super optimistic and say we have 40 plus. And where would you prefer to use it? Well, I would personally, for me, prefer browser. We'll just keep it open as a tab and just let it run with that. The first few times I used Claude, I was really surprised that it kept coming back and asking me questions because ChatGPT doesn't tend to do that. But it's great because if you haven't given it enough context, and even if you've given it what you think is a lot of context, it still often will come back and ask for some clarification. And that just helps it create something that's, even better and more suited to what you're looking for. Um, and while it's doing that, just a quick comparison of Claude and ChatGPT. I personally have found that ChatGPT is really great for like basic analytical types of tasks. I do not find it very good for creative things. It can give you an outline for something and do a great job at it. If you ask it to help you fill in details, it does a terrible, terrible job. It's very vague. I don't think it's as good as at mimicking your voice either. Claude definitely produces better writing and is much more creative. I've also had issues with ChatGPT struggling to do like a nicely formatted document, whereas with Claude, I mean, you've seen we didn't even give it a lot of information in terms of how we wanted our documents structured, and it created, a very nice, very professional looking form for us with very little input from us. So that is something that, at least in my experience, ChatGPT has not been able to do. So, I think there's a place for both. It just, you need to choose strategically which tool is better for certain things. So, um, let's just see. It is still working on that. I probably should have picked a lower number of clients. I was being overly optimistic with the 40 plus. But anyway, it has now come back with our client tracker and it's given us a little button. We can add clients, search by name or focus area. We can list all clients who've had sessions or have sessions coming up or are flagged in some way. So obviously I haven't added any clients, so there's nothing there. and then it gives me a list of exactly, or a detailed outline of exactly how to use it. So this is all just, I chose just to put it in a browser. In reality, I would have probably had it create a spreadsheet, but I figured on my sluggish computer that that would take a lot longer to do. So anyway, it gives you an example of what you can do. So, something else you might think of is that you might want to think through how to structure your services and pricing. And you can use Claude to help you map that out. You can talk through the logic, you can identify gaps in the market. It's not just for writing or creating content, it's very much a strategic thinking tool as well. I sort of think of it as my business advisor and marketing manager. I have used it to help me create my programs. I'll ask it to assess the market and based on what I'm offering to see what else is out there that's similar, to do price comparisons. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And let's see. Oh, yeah, here's something else that is really helpful. This prompt, I sort of alluded to before, but you can ask this in addition to doing that reference document that we talked about, is you can ask it what you should prioritize, what you should be working on next. And sometimes I will tell it that if I have specific things that I know I want to work on the next day. But often I will ask it, okay, what do I need to be doing next? And it will say, okay, tomorrow you need to do, these 5 things. These are your top priorities. And that can be really helpful, especially if you're trying to get your business up and running quickly and you've got a million things on the go and you're worried about things falling through the cracks. It can be a fantastic partner to help you keep everything organized and on track. And now, see, it's come back and given us these 3 main things that we have to focus on, adding our contact details, finalizing the consent language on the intake form, and deciding on the welcome email subject line. And then it's got another grouping here. These are things that are not quite as important, but we need to take care of before too long. And then our lowest priority things worth noting, but not high on our list. So and now I, didn't really even ask it to do this, but it has come up with this lovely context that we can cut and paste and put into our next session. It's, highlighted the context information that we gave it, but it's also added the brand colors, including the hex codes. I mentioned hex codes before. If you're not into graphic design, you might not be familiar with them, but these codes will give Claude the exact colors that you want to use. And it's just created this one as being your main brand color. But what it will do as you're building things out, if assuming you wanted to stick with that color, say you were working on a web page or something, it would also give you complementary colors. So it would tell you, hey, make the background this cream color rather than pure white, and here use this lighter green that's the right shade and value to go with this teal that you've chosen. So it can build out an entire color palette, like branding palette for you with those hex codes, copy them into a little file, keep them on your desktop, and they are just amazing to have. And then everything it creates for you is totally consistent. So, okay. So basically, we've covered a lot of stuff. I was going to wrap it up there, but I just want to do a fun little thing here. So, I'm going to say I want to run an ad on LinkedIn, a webinar next Wednesday. uh, on stress reduction. Please create the ad copy and an image to run with the ad. So let's see. It's probably going to ask us for more context there, but let's see what it comes back with. I've built some really nice ad images for my stuff, and it's just an absolute godsend, being able to use it to create things like that you'd either have to pay somebody for, or I've done a little bit of graphics work, but it would take me so much longer. So I'm just going to tell it to use something that it think fits rather than coming up with a title of my own. And then let's say professional women similar to my existing audience. Won't overcomplicate it. Um, okay, so it's struggling a little bit because it knows I'm not actually this person. So it's a little uncomfortable with that, saying it doesn't really have any context about me, but it's still come up and created something for us. It's got a headline here we can use in the ad, body text, information. It's given us a nice little title, Quiet the Noise, a practical webinar on stress reduction for professional women. It tells you what you're going to accomplish in the 60 minutes. You'll understand why your nervous system is stuck in overdrive and what you can do to change that starting the same day. And then it gives you the date and or a place to put in the date. We didn't give it enough information there, and a registration link, and then a suggestion of a call to action button of save my spot down at the bottom. And then the fun part here, it created, I know you probably can't see it very well, but this really nice looking image in our color palette, that we can just save this as a PNG file and just pop that right into things like LinkedIn, Instagram, Reddit, and basically you just provide those services with the link to your registration page, and it will run that ad for you, and it looks beautiful. So, if you wanted to, obviously you'd go over that in detail and make any edits or anything, but I just wanted to show you how quick and easy it is to get it to create something like that. So I use it for that sort of thing all the time, and it has been an absolute lifesaver. And I think my favorite thing is being able to create, unified, cohesive, branded assets for my business, whether it's a customized form, a registration form, an intake form, or a customized ad. Everything just, has the same colors and the same style and same tone. So it just has enabled me to create a lot of really professional looking content very quickly. So I hope that you find the same thing. I know we've covered a lot of ground today. Just want to leave you with a few things. First of all, if you don't feel comfortable with Claude, just start using it. Um, don't wait until you feel like you're an expert. Just start using it. Learn by doing. As get try different prompts and get feedback, and it doesn't quite suit you and you adjust it, you'll learn the prompt that you write the next time will be better. But you have to just start using it, and then you'll get comfortable with it very quickly. Remember to be specific as you can every single time. The more specific you are, the better your output will be, like by leaps and bounds. So take that extra 30 seconds or a minute and give it that extra detail, and you will be much happier with what you get back. Thirdly, remember to treat it like a conversation. Do not accept the first output that it gives you, even if it's factually correct. Read it over, even if it's just little things where you're not quite comfortable with what it's saying. Ask for a different version. Give it specific feedback if you can. Sometimes you'll just say, no, you know what? I don't like that at all. Create something else for me. You can ask it to create 3, 4, 5 versions of something. I wouldn't recommend that if it's a big thing that you're asking it to create, but ask it to do different versions, and each one will just get better and better. Fourth thing is save your work. Run that reference document prompt at the end of every session. Use it the next time you start another session. We didn't really talk about this, but Claude windows, if you have a window open and you have a conversation running, eventually when it gets really, really long, you'll see a message saying that it's compressing the conversation in order to allow it to continue. Um, that's the point where sometimes you start to lose some detail, where it will forget things, even though they were in the same session, it starts to forget maybe decisions that were made or things that you told it to do or not do. So you do want to start new conversation windows from time to time. There's also a limit in terms of the number of images. So one of the things I used Claude for was to get feedback on my website. So I would design a web page, I would take a screen capture of it, give it to Claude and say, hey, what do you think? Can you help me do an audit of both the visual appearance and the copy? And so, each one of those screen captures that I would give it counted as an image. And I think it's a limit of 100 per day with the plan that I have. So usually that's not a problem, but say you want to feed it a large PDF file because you want it to help you, learn a certain thing, or you're basing maybe a program on a document you created and you want to feed it that document. You will sometimes hit those limits and you'll be forced to open up a new Claude window. If you have run that reference document prompt in the previous window, then you're all good and it will carry over from what you were doing. So do not forget that. And don't forget to come back to the advanced section of the prompts in the reference that I'm going to give you. You might not be comfortable using them yet, but eventually you absolutely will be, and you can do some really, really amazing things. And it can just completely, change the approach that you are able to take with your business. So again, that reference document that goes with this video has all 51 prompts ready for you to use. Just fill in the part in the brackets with your specific information and you are ready to go. And just start with whichever category is most urgent for you right now. You can even ask Claude what that is. Tell it where you're at with your business, where you want to be with your business, and say, what are my top priorities? And it'll get you off in the right direction. If you're just getting started, brand new, you probably want to start with category 1 or 2. Um, and you may have some questions even before category 1 with really basic stuff. I don't know where everyone's at, but any question that can come into your mind, ask Claude. It's almost guaranteed it'll be able to give you some feedback. And if it can't help you with your specific question, it will tell you where to go or how to find the information that you need. So just keep that conversation flowing, keep asking it questions, and it'll get better and better. And it will enable you to build an amazing business and do some amazing stuff. And I'm really excited to hear what all of you are going to be able to do with the exciting tools that you have. So thank you all for tuning in. And if people have specific questions, you can message me with those. If I get enough questions, I can throw together another video that, I can do like a Q&A kind of thing. So I'm happy to do that if people are interested in doing that. Okay, so thank you all again for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.